Now, let me make sure you fully understand how to use the oiler. What I'm doing when I'm oiling all these different components is I'm reaching in with the tip of the oiler and I'm squeezing gently. I'm touching the component, releasing, squeezing, touching, releasing, squeezing, touching, and releasing. You can see I delivered 3 droplets. I'm just doing it a little faster. I'm just going 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that's how we would deliver 3 drops or 5 droplets of oil accurately. Let's take a look at oiling the Avancé embroidery machine. There are different components on this machine that need to be oiled at different intervals and with different quantities of oil. To start with, we're going to look at the most important. The most important is the rotary hook. I'm going to take out my bobbin, and we want to make sure we oil the rotary hook at least 1 or 2 drops of oil every 4 hours of operation. Okay, and I prefer to do this before we start embroidering. So right in this hole right here, we're going to simply deliver 1, 2 drops of oil. Now any excess that runs down, just grab a paper towel. We'll just blot it out of there. And then with the needle unthreaded and the bobbin out, I like to run a couple trims on the machine using the manual trim function. What that does is that moves the oil around and gets it to where it actually needs to be in order to be used by the rotary hook. You want to remember the rotary hook, it's metal on metal, so we have to keep that very well lubricated. Another little tip, if you ever take the bobbin out of the machine and it feels warm to the touch, regardless of how many hours you have been running the machine, that indicates that the rotary hook needs 1 or 2 drops of oil. Now, the next place we're going to take a look at is underneath the needle plate here. And for this, we're going to turn the power off on the machine. And if you reach underneath the machine on the left-hand side, there's a motor under here. Well, if you turn the little shaft sticking out from underneath the motor, you can push out the moving mess. This is your trimmer right here. And what we want to do is we just want to put a little bit of oil on that moving mess and then take a rag, or in this case, I'm going to use my finger, wipe that on there, and then we want just a film. So I'm going to come back and I'm actually going to essentially wipe it off, thus leaving just a film of oil on there. And we want to do that once a week. Every time we're in here cleaning out the rotary hook area, we're going to come in and we're going to do that. And then I like to put it back to approximately where it was when we began. And now we would simply put the needle plate back on. Okay, next, all of the red holes that we see on, if we're facing the front of the embroidery machine, the holes to the right hand side, okay, we've got several holes, and we are going to, using a needle oiler, deliver 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 drops of oil in each one of them. Next, we're going to put 5 drops of oil right up here, and 5 drops of oil right on this shaft here. And we want to do that once a week. We also want to come to the bed arm, and you've got this hole in the front here, okay? And once a week, we want to put approximately 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 drops. If we move the pantograph out of the way, we also have a hole in the back that we want to put 7 drops in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And now we just want to take a paper towel and just wipe off the excess oil. And move our pantograph back. Once a week, on the left-hand side of the embroidery head, when we move the machine to needle position 15, it reveals a hole down here, and in here we do, if you feel straight back, you'll feel a little shaft in there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 drops of oil. And then what's really important is we need to keep the reciprocator shaft lubricated. So not where the screw is, but just past the screw, there's a little channel in here. And we want to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 drops in there once a week. We also need to make sure that we oil the upper needle bars. And we want to do this once a month. We want to put 2 to 3 drops of oil on each one of them. So I want you to see in a close-up, if you reach inside the slot here at an angle, you'll touch the needle bar, and on the outside of the needle bar is the spring. So you'll see as I move this up and down that I'm actually compressing and expanding that spring out. So now let's take a look at the way we want to oil this. So we want to go into each one of these slots, and we want to deliver 1, 2, 3 drops of oil in each one of these. You can see this doesn't take very long. And we want to make sure, again, that we do that once a month. Once a month, we also want to make sure that we oil the lower portion of the needle bars. So I have the machine at needle number 15, and as I'm standing in front of the machine facing it, I'm off to the right-hand side, and you just want to reach in these slots. Now, inside here, I can reach under, and you'll notice there's a felt pad in here. Okay? That felt pad shouldn't look dry like it does right now. What we want to do is we want to just put enough oil on these pads, which is going to be quite a few drops, and we just want to get them resaturated with oil. Once you get it saturated, now you don't want oil starting to pool up on the top of it. You just want it nice and saturated. And then we would move on. There's 1 felt pad for every 3 holes. Then we'll move on to the next one. And then the next one, so on and so forth. Now, to get the other side, you're going to have to move the machine back to needle position 1 so that you can get to the other side of the embroidery head. Once a month, you want to take these rollers that help do a color change, and we want to put 1 or 2 drops of oil just on each bearing. Now if you have WD-40, these can be done with WD-40. Just a couple little drops here. And then what we want to do is we want to work that in. So we just want to keep rolling them a bit. And then any excess oil, just take a paper towel and just wipe off the excess. Once a month, with the machine in needle position 15, we want to remove the cover over the color change motor. It's just 2 Phillips head screws. And the cover just lifts right off. Now, we want to remove any old grease first. So the cam is right here, and we just want to make sure that we get any old grease off of that. Okay, we can move the color change manually. We also want to make sure that we get any old grease off of the bearings. And now we simply want to put a film of grease back on that cam. We don't want any real quantity of grease. So I'm going to basically put it on. But then I'm going to take my hand and I'm going to wipe it on and wipe it off at the same time, because I only want a film. I don't want any real quantity on here. Okay. Now we would simply put the cover back on. Now I got a little grease on my hand. Everything's getting a little slippery. We also want to do where the wiper rides. So the wiper bracket down here, we want to again remove any old grease. And the reason for removing any of this old grease, because the old grease is going to collect lint and dust and things of that nature. So we want to make sure that we're not getting all of that into the moving parts. That's the reason we want to wipe off the old. And again, we just want to film. So I'm going to actually apply this with my finger. I just feel that I can actually apply, and we want to make sure we do the front and the back. And again, I don't want a thick coat of it. So now I'm going to just go through and I'm going to just kind of wipe it off until there's just a film left on there. We'll get this heavy amount that's down at the bottom here. We'll get that out of there. And now I have a nice clean film of grease on that bracket. Now the last thing that we're going to maintain on this machine, again on a monthly basis, is we're going to wipe off any old grease that's on the guide rail from the LM guide. That's a lateral movement guide. That's what actually supports the head. And we're going to just put a nice film of grease on the front and the back. And again, I'm going to get any excess off of there. I don't want a real thick coat of it, just a nice little film of it. Beautiful, just like that on the front and on the back. Now we need to move the machine into head position number 15 so that it exposes the other side. Again, start by wiping off the old and replacing with the new. Again, a nice film. And lastly, the other maintenance that you want to do, which you will do whenever needed, is if you see dust on the machine, up by the thread tree, anywhere on the machine itself, on the embroidery head, take some compressed air or a can of air and squirt it off and just kind of keep the machine nice and clean. And that ends the maintenance on the Avancé embroidery machine.